returns from these loans that we keep getting from you, especially for infrastructure development? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Murondo. So at this moment, ladies and gentlemen, if you allow me, we can hear from the panelists. We can start with Rachel, because that's the direct question to her. The other questions are directed to Minister of Finance and the KCC. Again, I beg that she answers them as it comes to, ground that this event at the end. So Rachel, over to you, and probably you can also add my concern that I raised. Please.
Okay, thank you, and thank you very much for the questions. Yes, we do assess the debt, but do we also do assessment of the value of the borrowing? I think if I was to give a quick answer, I would say yes. And our concern is as much as everyone's. From one aspect, because we do support development and we want to make sure that whatever funds we are bringing on board actually create value. So you find that even we get, when we're doing our projects, we do try to do follow-up so that we make sure that our projects are actually implemented to the dot and to avoid wastage and loss of money. But overall, looking at just investment and borrowing in Uganda, I think it was 2017, we did produce a report about public investment management. And this was a question that it was actually trying to address. That if we are borrowing and investing, what is the return on investment so that it can be able to support and make sure that this debt is sustainable. What we found at that time was that we are not getting a good value, and for the reasons that I've already mentioned, because public investments are not managed properly. From the technical perspective, we can still talk about this, feasibility studies, preparing, making sure that the processes are there. But the issue of wastage and inefficiencies, or in other terms, corruption, as some people have mentioned, especially in procurement, are also live. And we have to make sure that these are addressed, because these are the leakages that come out of what would have been a return on these borrowings. And that's why we probably don't see as good with the first moderator. It was about how do we prepare or support government to prepare and implement. All these issues are entangled and they relate to the same issue that I've been talking about. For example, for the World Bank, we've been, should I call it, told, but we also know that the processes are quite long of getting the projects in place. But we also know that on the government side, the processes are not just long, but they are now growing. Because there has been a process of improving the way public investments work. Prepare the projects properly, take them to the development committee, clear them before they can go into the budget. But today we have an additional layers of processes that make taking any project through government quite difficult. So we are trying to work with government to see how do we make sure that these processes are reduced so that we can get value for money out of these projects. Prepare a project, get the right project first of all on board, and then make sure that you implement it so that you can get value. In the implementation side, there are quite a number of challenges, including capacity issues, including processes that are not very standardized across the board. But if we do improve capacities and clarify on the processes, I think we can get this project and be able to tap into the financing. As of today, the World Bank has a portfolio of 5.6 and still counting, because either 20 is yet to be fully allocated, but 5.6 billion. But when you look at already allocated to Uganda and part of the project portfolio, but in terms of implementation and disbursement, we are at 38%. So the entire almost 62% of the 5.6 is still seated, and you'll be strange to actually rush to allocate more or even to try to get more resources if the ones you have on the table are not actually moving forward. There is an allocation for each country, but if you show that you really need the money, those allocations are always, you can always get more money out of IDEA if you show that you are committed to getting more resources. Let me just comment a little bit on the issue of vulnerability and the fact that we don't just stop at assessing that you're sustainable, but look at the vulnerability issues and do stress tests. What if a shock was to hit Uganda? What would happen today? And that is one of the reasons why actually the risk of debt distress was raised from low, where Uganda has been seated comfortably with very few other countries over the last 10 or so years, and it went to moderate. But when it goes to moderate, we don't stop there. Then we have to work with government, and we've done this, to see how do we make sure that we actually don't even pass this. You've shifted from a bad place to an uncomfortable place, but how do you not go into the debt distress issue? And this is where we request government to start thinking of reforms that are going to, one, promote debt sustainability. I think this activity is one of them, but also the publications that the ministry has been talking about. Two, to make sure that you don't borrow beyond a certain limit, and that is debt management. And then three is the issue of fiscal sustainability, and that touches both the revenue side and the expenditure side, and spending efficiently that has been talked about. So I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rachel. Stephen and Geoffrey, you represent the private sector here, and when I see the DSA report and the presentation made by Dr. Mpunza, you feature quite prominently there as a private sector, and there is, when we talk debt sustainability, government is counting a lot on private sector to actually fill in the gaps, where debt is going to, drive activity. And the question that comes in, and I would like now to take it to the person out there in business, because business you mentioned it, you are trying to, fix all the gaps. But businessman, you are a taxman is becoming more and more aggressive. Now it presents a very interesting question, and that's a tough balance between meeting the targets of the taxman and protecting the private sector. I really want you to speak to that with a solution anchored mind. How do we balance, meeting the tax collection obligations? In fact, one of the strategies that finance is proposing to actually ensure debt sustainability is wrapped up under the debt, rather the domestic revenue mobilization strategy. So how do we create a balance where we don't break the private sector and at the same time tick the box on targets? I can start with you, Steve.
Thank you very much, Charles. I think when you look at our tax ratio to GDP, we have stagnated at around 13.5 for quite some time. And we rank almost the lowest in the region. I think where we have failed is basically reining in the informal sector. We have a huge informal sector that's not in the tax bracket. I think all efforts need to be focused in that regard. When you look at the tax register, I think we are probably running at about 1 million taxpayers, the population of taxable population of what, 20 plus million people. So efforts in terms of reining the informal sector. I will give a quick example. I don't know how many borders we have, but we have millions and millions of borders. You go at the crossing point, you cannot help. Those occupational groups need to be brought on board. Today, I think if you do a quick math, I'd say every border in this town pays 50,000 shillings as a occupational group tax. That's a huge capacity that you're creating. So I do not know what innovation we need, what technology we need, but on reining in the informal sector that remains our second tax burden.
Thank you, Stephen. Dr. You can take it away from there as well.
Thank you. I'd like to approach this again from the solutions point of view. Let me continue with that thread from Stephen. Expanding the tax base is crucial. How do we do it? We need a conversation on this, but from where we are coming from. The key lies in mobilizing domestic savings. Debt is someone's savings. That's the simplest way to describe debt. Debt is somebody's savings. Now, to the extent that the price signal for mobilizing savings is poor, we need to have a conversation to move the savings rate from where it is now, about 3 points, to a rate which can attract someone to park his or her savings in a savings instrument or in a savings vehicle. It is as simple and as straightforward as that. Tax can only be unlocked, taxation can be unlocked, revenues can only be unlocked when households, business are investing. And business and households cannot invest unless they have savings. So this is an old discussion. We have previously been told when we were pushing this is that this is the narrative from our external friends that our homesteads are poor, they are dollar-a-day households, they cannot save anything, and that we do not have a savings culture. But at the same time, we do not have the savings instruments. The savings instruments are not there to attract domestic savings. So we need to deliberately stand up together as a team, because it is a matter of mutual interest, and bring about these savings instruments in the economy. And we can do that. We can do that. Again, it is only through what Stephen has mentioned about the informal sector. You cannot bring the informal sector into the so-called formal sector by fiat. You can attract them. And you attract them through instruments. The commercial bankers here know very well how money comes into the bank and then promptly goes out, because it is not attractive for some types of funds to remain sitting in a bank. People fear those deductions. People fear the questions. That where is this money coming from? And so on and so forth. We must make it very easy and not punishable for money to come into the system. In conclusion, what we need to push for as a team is the strategy. The strategy is we need to work towards, there needs to be policy action, because this is the policy debate. We need policy action towards an 8% GDP growth rate year on year. Why am I saying this? I'm saying this because it is achievable. It is achievable. There was some time in 1994 when in an idle manner we reached 11% GDP growth rate without much effort. That was just because at that point in time, Ugandans were feeling bullish. They were feeling bullish about the economy. They wanted to invest long. But that bullish feeling ran into the headwinds of stabilization, fiscal consolidation. Now, the question was, I remember that period very vividly. The question was, if government is shorting the economy, why should I take a long position? Maybe the government knows some risks which I don't know. So let's come together, because these things are doable. Let's work towards an 8% year-on-year GDP growth, because that's what we call the jobs creating rate. Any rate below that is, frankly speaking, not very interesting. I can explain to you why. When you grow by the usual 4 points or 6 points even, and then our population growth rate is 3.2. For those of you who have done the little math, you are like somebody in a gym on a treadmill, but your feet is moving very well, but you are stationed in one spot. That's the best way I can illustrate. You are moving very fast because the
do you think civil society has a role to play here? Because you sit between the 401c and government, you have the mind to interpret some of the numbers and the tables that finance was presenting here. So what role can you play?
Okay, so let me do this first, is to say, I think the civil society budget advocacy group, which we formed many years ago, it's good that it's now a strong force. And as Julia said in the beginning, they are joining this because of the need to actually ensure that whatever advocacy is done is evidence-based. So what I'm hearing as key messages and takeaways for civil society that they can work with on taking this process forward. One is, I think it's Dr. Ogwana Maris who helped us to say that let's use the right comparisons. Let's not get hung up with our debt. So I think that's something that private discussion forward and see what can we do about the right comparisons that will help us to understand the sustainability better. I think another message that I'm taking away is the whole question of ensuring that we have strong policies, regulatory processes and systems. It seems as if we are all agreed that if we are going to do anything about debt in this country, the kind of ways in which government engages in any policy process will have to be thought through carefully. So, PSST will have to sit with the minister. In a sense, you need to do certain things that will make it attractive. And I think lastly is, I think we've also heard that actually there are resources in this economy that can be invested in this economy. So while there is a very interesting nuance in the report that says that we shouldn't be borrowing domestically, I think Mr. Robert was telling us that actually we should be borrowing domestically. So let's try and also do some analysis and say, how can we create those instruments that will help us to borrow domestically? So I see that these are some of the areas that we can latch on and we can take away from this process and build something much more richer for Uganda.
Thank you very much, Richard. And I know there's been debate, for instance, about pension funds being freed to support long-term investment. Stephen and Geoffrey have had these long discussions on that, and probably that will be one of the areas to look at. How do we access some of this money for long-term investment? Now, at this moment, ladies and gentlemen, I will invite Dr. Fred Muhomuza. There were some questions raised by Matthias over, the study, the research on the numbers. So he will respond to that, and I will beg him to do the honors after the submission to invite Yassine to give us a wrap-up for the discussion.
Thank you very much, our moderator. Just a quick one. The numbers, the reason we have issues with the domestic data is because we are starting from 1989. And there, of course, much of the data you have is on government bonds, but also it's a conceptualization issue. We believe that arrears is late. But some people do not think arrears should be captured in. Now, if you go in the 90s, you will find it's arrears there. And that's why government at the time introduced a commitment control system to make sure people do not commit government when they have no money. Because once you consume that resource, you owe, legally and otherwise. So when we go behind there, we'll be able to find a lot of unstable data. That's what we want to pick up. And I hear people talking about the oil. I come from the oil region, and I was there over the weekend. Unless we are going to fill the oil by bicycles, there is not going to be a pipeline in the next 3 to 4 years. These are the shocks. You factor that in. Can we budget without oil? What does the picture look like? And the issues are really complicated. I don't want to get into it because that will be another conversation. Am I supposed to invite my co-partner in this crime? But I want to really appreciate the PSST for supporting this research work. PSST will really appreciate for keeping the hand on the ropes and tasking us to do this work. This is an annual event, so every mid-March I expect us to be in these conversations to support the use of finance to submit the budget they are supposed to submit to Parliament before 1st of April, but also we'll be coming back. Remember, if you have seen our Over the Moves Economic Forum, which talks about research for policy and practice. That's the cycle we keep playing here. We do research for policies to support the practitioners who are the private sector. That's it. Let's solve our private sector. a little bit of it in public, then the other will settle the evening. It's very fast, and so you know who will win the fight.
Thank you, Dr. Fred. I'll probably invite you for the This has been wonderful. We did not expect such a huge response. Actually, one of my colleagues with whom we are organizing this said, we invited people at very short notice. The room is going to be empty. But even before we started, the room was actually overflowing. So I was very happy to see you all here and keep it up. I'll just respond to a few things before I take it upon myself to invite the peers. I don't know to give this wrap up. Of course, one or two people have said something about comparing with others. I must say that we do live in a globalized world where things that are happening elsewhere actually directly affect us. So it is very important for us to take stock of what is happening elsewhere. If you look at the global financial crisis of 2007-8, it was sparked by the collapse of Lehman Brothers, a big investment bank in the US. But when Lehman Brothers collapsed in the US, you saw the contagion spreading to Europe, to Asia, and even to Africa. So these global events are very important. And maybe lastly on that, someone said something recently which was a bit sad but true. Said there is hunger in Africa because there is a war in Ukraine. So people in Africa are going hungry because of that. So global events directly feed into our local life here. So I believe we should continue to take stock of those. There was something that was introduced to me, the fear to borrow index. This is something I've not heard of before. I've been doing this for quite some time in Uganda and elsewhere, but I'll continue to look it up. ECOP, we should instead build a railway. Unfortunately, I'm not an engineer, but to my untrained mind, I wonder about the feasibility of transporting all that way. At peak production, we expect about 260,000 barrels of oil per day. And clearly, this would be a bit difficult to transport from Hoima to the coast, whether in Kenya or Tanzania, on a railway. But like I said, I'm not an engineer. There was an issue of debt overhang. Debt overhang means a situation where you have so much debt that you're actually unable to attract new debt even for very productive investments. So you have a really good project, it is a sure deal as the betting people say, but because you have so much debt and everybody fears to deal with you, nobody is willing to lend to you. This is what we call debt overhang. And I can assure you that we are very far from this. As a matter of fact, my colleagues from the Ministry of Finance will tell you that we have a long queue at the Ministry of people who are very willing to lend money to us, and we just have to keep vetting them and saying, okay, maybe next time. But we have a very long queue, so we have a lot of people willing to lend to us, and that also speaks to the sustainability of our debt. Rachel here is from the World Bank. The World Bank remains our single biggest creditor. And I want to assure you that some of these people, they do the analysis, they understand the situation, and they decide, they make these lending decisions based on the sustainability that they see. So if we weren't really sustainable, some of these clever people wouldn't want to give us their money. I want to conclude by talking about the comparison between pygmies and yeah, so indeed, peer countries, because they're countries at the same level of development. We don't usually want to compare ourselves with countries that are very different level of development, because their needs are different, their costs are different, and even their capacity to pay is different. So we try to compare ourselves with countries which are similar, where that comparison would make sense. But just for indulgence, I want to state a few numbers that are for the giants. So debt to GDP, USA 96%, Japan 263%, UK 100.2%, Italy 150%, and France 112%. Over to you, Charles.
Thank you, Yasin. like we mentioned at the beginning, that we are live on NTV and we are streaming also on our digitals. So we have some key comments coming in there, and one of them is Richard Bonzi is saying Uganda has potential to surge its growth without increasing its debt burden. What we need is a political desk that consumes ideas and advice of honest experts like Dr. Muhumuza, whom I have a class here, and not from street guys. I don't know what you mean by that. Then we have Gideon is saying, hi NTV team. The only challenge we are facing in Uganda for economic growth is a lack of discipline in our economic policy implementation, marred by corruption and some corrupt issues. So those are some of the comments coming out of the digital platform. So at this moment, I would like to invite Julius. Julius is going to invite our PSST to give the crowning of our dialogue today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Really, I'm really very happy that we have come to the conclusion of this dialogue. But also we need time, because we ourselves should do time. I have a few remarks here, but PSST really, it would be extremely unfair for us to summarize this rich discussion into a one-pager. As usual, if you would allow us, we will definitely make a very good report that we can follow up later and discuss it in full details. But two important things we would like your commitment on. One is your continued support for this next year at the same time, and maybe also at the same time, have this conversation go on. And last on our part is really to thank our panelists, but also our partners, Makerere University Business School. There are many civil society organizations out there we are partnered with, but you choose to partner with us, but also NTV for being able to host us. On this note, let me take the opportunity to invite my partner in crime to be able to close this special workshop.
Thank you very much, Julius. Thank you very much, our colleagues, for this wonderful dialogue. I think apart from other places, this is where I spent the longest time ever since I got this job. It's very difficult to spend time. And there are many competing, but I had to, because I take this very seriously. Now, there are so many things I've written. I've listened very attentively. I've captured almost every single feedback, particularly those which are based on facts and critical analysis. And trust me, we shall follow up with them. But there are a few which deserve some little comment. Then I give you a few analyses and we end. The first one, I think, who articled you and Dr. Obwana, because we've been having this group in economics for a long time. And he has really brought it up. Stop comparing debt to GDP ratio, because they don't present the true position that we want to talk about. Well, you are right. Anyone who has been in a class at graduate school knows GDP, first of all, is not a government resource. And yet it is government to provide us the resource. It shouldn't be what we emphasize. But, Dr. Bona, as you know, over time we have been talking about rising debt compared in terms of debt to GDP ratio. It has been an issue. Now that the data is showing us it's not a problem, it's not what we thought it would be a problem. Now we are shifting. The value is not important. We wanted to first make it clear that actually it's not actually very, very important. For us, we are within the threshold and we want to keep there, even in our charter for fiscal responsibility. But definitely at the ministry, if you read the report, both the DSA but also the debt accountability reports, all of them, which we give to Parliament, we publish on the website, as Stephen, His Excellency, Stephen Kaboya told you. We have a number of other variables now which we track, other than the debt to GDP and even the revenue, debt service. We are checking more than just a number going forward. We want to look at the qualitative also aspects of this debt, so that we are in full view of the default risks, and we make sure that we don't get anywhere near, and the Yasin has told you, and he's taking you in Ramadan, so you can't lie. And our ability to service the debt, we are tracking all these values. The direct economic affairs, the overall course of the Yasin is there, and his main job is to ensure that this economy remains vibrant, and is the one who collects this revenue. So we want to be able to service this debt comfortably, and that we remain with enough money to invest in other things. Somebody was asking us, what are those things you are doing? Now, Sarah, I was telling her there quietly, the problem, she looks with only one eye. She closes one of the eyes because there are a lot of things which happen. They don't need advertisement in this country, on which we have borrowed and invested. Sarah drives to the village, like many of you. You know how the road is actually have been put, the road in H1, except in the Kampala. And in Kampala also, we are coming a very big time to investors in revamp all of these roads, so that mobility, but also apart from roads, they are planned. I think the ED of Kampala and Atu has told you to get the public transport systems worked on. They are there. All these will require resources beyond tokenism, so that we can make our country also much more developed. So all of those variables, Dr. Bona, the net interest service and so on, we are now tracking so that we stay healthy. For Dr. Bona, another thing you took on you with was the investors. You say actually exemptions, investors don't want them. Why are we living with them? I want to tell you, and one of these days I'm going to ask you to come to my office. We work for just 1 year together. And you see, investors actually ask for exemptions. It's one of the requisites required for us. I have a full office there who will evaluate these requests. There are people who are sitting there, their job is so many requirements for this. You need to know your country very well. And you know, one major lesson is involvement is that everywhere is different. What perhaps works in Kenya, much as we are neighbors and we share a border, perhaps does not work here. We have a history which is not very clean, perhaps as other countries. You have a history where you are very probably people's investments. You tell them you are no longer owning this. Imagine you have some your small investments. That's your house where you stay. Somebody comes and says, from today, it's not yours. We have that history here. How many countries in the world have ever done that? That affects us. So, there are certain things we have to do to get people here to trust us and invest with us. We give them free land. We give them very generous tax incentives. But now what we are saying, going forward, and we have already put in place a plan, and we are implementing it beginning with this coming financial year. A plan called Tax Exemption Rationalization Plan. To rationalize these exemptions. Not to stop them, but number one, to put in place a criteria for accessing them. Number two, to put in place a tracking system to ensure that what an investor commits to do, he does it. You want to do it? You stop. Then we may collect from you. Number three, we are putting in place sunset clause. Because we don't these incentives are not perpetual. At a certain point, they will end and you have to pay. And so on and so forth. So what we are saying is, these exemptions are not bad. Countries, all countries around the world have used them. Nobody should ever lie to me. I'm a student of industrial policy. And it's the last meal by here. No country on earth has ever developed without giving things. But the difference is the discipline of tracking them, of ensuring that you execute the way you have planned. If an investor says he's going to use local raw materials, he's going to create jobs, he's going to do something, he must do such things. That's the discipline perhaps we have been missing and we are putting in place. Then I can't avoid the question of new vision because you know journalists, when you don't answer any question, you will feel very bad. No journalists are told to look at everything as glass half empty, not half full. Now, he's saying the last 3 years we borrowed. I think he was looking at Yassini's graph, that borrowing, and he was quoting also some leaders of nearby countries. You know, Uganda, by the way, you didn't know, Uganda is a star performer when it comes to macro variables. We are benchmarked by all our peers, without exception. This one I want to know. So whenever you hear these things of a neighbor who's leaders talking, just know they're talking about other neighbors. That's what I want you to know. Having said that, so these things of, assure us that you are not borrowing for recurring, where you putting the money. Because I told you we borrow mainly here from the government. We have enough money here, we generate locally. to finance our current expenditure. The last 2 years, while there was a slight jump in especially this money we got from banks, we are still explaining because we had a revenue shortfall. We were not collecting the revenue when the economy was locked down. But the state had the responsibility of keeping all of us alive. How? By, first of all, locking us down, and we stayed home. You know that was a full-time job of the state to keep us home from danger. People wanted to smuggle themselves, go to a friend to have a house party during COVID. So we spent money on security institutions to keep Ugandans locked down. Number two, to treat those who are getting sick, and also to ensure that we can get enough of supply for those who are vulnerable. Food, medicines, and so on. And you saw all those things. So I don't want to remember that. That slightly led to that. And it was a temporary thing. Gone. Now we are saying every money that we borrow. And you know, our borrowing is transparent. I don't know why you're doing it. It is there. And that's why I was telling my people, don't take these things for granted, or just that you have printed documents. Ugandans are busy with other things. They don't read documents. Please bring them, give them Prime TV, and we show Ugandans where every single coin of theirs goes, because that full accountability must be done. Now, I want to conclude. There are, of course, so many other people who have raised issues. I've noted them. Maybe my friend Matthias Katamba. Matthias, we are investing in these people. Uganda invests in these people. The Human Capital Development Program claims the largest share of the budget of Uganda. It's the single program taking 28% of the budget, of the discretionary budget, the money which is available for us to distribute around. And it goes in educating Ugandans, keeping the safe water flowing, and healthcare. I know it's not enough. Perhaps we need to double that money, because Uganda is a younger country, as we have said. You know, half of Ugandans are children below 14 years. That government has to spend all immunize them, treat them, keep them in schools. That is disproportionate, a different story from elsewhere, perhaps, where the population is much older and working and fending for themselves. So, I wanted to assure you that we are investing in people only that it is not observable, and observable investments are quite difficult to account. They only account after generation maybe, and this is also an story. Rachel and had her team helping us to look into how do we get these things tracked, and you're investing in human capital, and are you getting results, and so on and so forth. Because we want to do Uganda to have the maximum number of years of schools, 18 years of schools, and the cost there is quite huge. So when you look at the proportion of the budget spent there is big, but the unit kind of expenditure, you'll find that it is much lower than perhaps the peers, because of also the number of the younger people you have to invest in. Sir, PDM, we are suffering from fast failure for me. There's what they call a fast failure syndrome, that you start to fear to move, and also to have people account before even they have started.